Good morning, afternoon and evening, sports fans. We're back, this time with the build phase of the Tamiya Cromwell Mark IV. This video will cover the entire build phase of the Cromwell. If you haven't already, you can check out the short kit review here on my channel. With the formalities out of the way, let's build this thing. One of the extras I got for this kit is this Photoetch set from Eduard, a great addition for some finer details. Part 1 is building the rear part of the hull and constructing the wheels and sprockets. Using a pair of snips, I carefully cut the component off the sprue. Then with a sharp scalpel, I carefully clean up the excess plastic from the snip areas. Finally, with some fine grit sandpaper, I sand the edges to create a smooth edge. The next piece is going to require some cutting and removing molded details for the Photoetch. This will be required on a fair few parts, so it's always good to read through the Photoetch instructions prior to building. Now we can start putting together the parts for this rear hull section using the tried and trusted Tamiya extra thin cement. Next is the tow hooks. These don't require fixing and simply clip into place. Now it's wheel time. These have a rubber grommet that sits inside. This allows the wheels to roll, even when mounted to the tank. Nothing too complicated here, just a load of careful cleanup to avoid flat spots. With all the wheels built, we can move on to the suspension arms. This is fixed position on this kit, but just to be sure it's good to check, they are all level on a flat surface. The rear section of the hull we built earlier can now be fitted. I used some quick dry cement on the inside to ensure a good hold. Front plate is next. The lower hull section of the tank is starting to take shape now. Next stage is adding the protective armor plates to the side. These protected the suspension components of the tank and gave it a second skin. These plates I gave a good going over with the extra thin cement once fitted. The fitment of all these parts really are fantastic. No filling or sanding required. Wheels can go on next. These don't require any glue as mentioned earlier. The grommets holds them on nicely and allows them to roll. With the lower hull complete, we can now move on to the upper hull section. Again, I have to mention it. The fitment is brilliant. Glue it, attach it, done. Before gluing though, we need to fit these Photoetch grills. These fit to the inside of the upper section. The kit does come with a piece of mesh for these pieces if you don't have the Photoetch kit. This CA Flexi Glue from VMS is my go-to for Photoetch parts. This stuff has a great hold and allows good fitting adjustment before drying. The grills go into place without much stress. The additional dry time of the CA really does help. Now the grills are in place, we can fit the top section of the hull. It simply slots into place with no fuss. I put some quick dry cement along the seams to ensure a good solid hold. The main construction of the hull is complete. A really smooth, relaxing build so far. Now it gets a whole lot more fiddly though. There is a good chunk of Photoetch to add to the rear section of the tank. We start with these little smoke charger boxes. These have some fantastic detail once constructed, although a little fiddly. They are worth it. I won't bore you with the complete fiddly process of these Photoetch parts. In short, for each component, I carefully bend into position with a pair of needle nose pliers and glue in place using the CA black. Those eagle-eyed among you will have noticed my mistake earlier using the kit smoke chargers provided. So I tore these things off and cleaned up the mess. Once cleaned up, I stick these little guys to the rear of the hull with the CA glue. The old spots gave a perfect marker for position. A little adjustment and they are on. There's a world of smaller brackets to stick on to complete the rear, and these metal underguards to the main hull section. Next up, the storage boxes that sit on the side of the tank. As before, they need the existing detail cut off them so we can construct and attach new Photoetch latches. These are mighty small and rather fiddly, but again for me, this detail is worth the effort. From here, construction on the hull really picks up pace. The rear mesh is attached, the front armor plate goes on with the forward-facing machine gun. At this point, it's starting to look a hell of a lot more like a Cromwell. Side cover panels now go on, followed by the rear guards and covers. Next, I carefully start attaching the tools. A fair amount of work has gone into creating all the clamps and brackets out of the Photoetch prior to install. It wasn't too complicated, just takes a lot of time and patience to bend the metal to the correct shape and glue in place. Now the storage boxes that were built earlier can be fitted. Using a lighter, I carefully heat the front mud guards to create damage. This is a great way to add that bent metal look to plastic parts, but be careful. Too much heat too fast, and the plastic melts too much, or worse, catches fire. These can now be fitted along with the front guards. I later end up tearing one of these off, as in reality, these quite often broke off when in service. The front periscope goes on along with the Photoetch guards. All standard stuff really, as mentioned. The kit fits together like a glove. Could have done with a few more things going wrong or not fitting properly to add a bit of excitement. I'm certainly not complaining though. Rear engine hatches go on with no trouble, then these Photoetch piano hinges for the front mudguards. These are a nice touch. After fitting the front light guards, we get onto the fun stuff, the gun. Here you can see the kit comes with a two-piece barrel. This, in my opinion, is a bloody faff, so I went ahead and printed myself a single-piece one instead. If you would like one of these barrels for your kit, you can find them on my online store. Link is in the description. The rest of the main turret parts fly together smooth as butter. The iconic bolted side armor plates are glued in place. This completes the main structure of the turret. Next, it's the last small details on the turret. This is mainly the hatches for the loader and commander and the final pieces of Photoetch. These all go on without a hitch. Finally, the last hatches go onto the hull. Apart from some ropes of which I unfortunately forgot to record, this is the end of the Tamiya kit build section. Another little addition I made are these resin jerry cans. Link for these is also in the description. If you have made it this far in the video, I thank you. If you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would be amazing. Thanks again. Now let's add some stowage. For this, I carefully cut some boxes out of foam and positioned them onto the rear of the tank. My aim here is to mimic storage boxes under a tarpaulin, so it doesn't matter too much what these look like. For the top, I cut out a small size piece out of the non-textured part of a tissue. The folds in the middle don't matter. This will be hidden in the next stage. Carefully, I split the tissue so it's nice and thin. This will help with shaping over the boxes. Next, I make a PVA and water solution. No real accuracy with the ratios, just so it's a watery consistency. I glued the foam boxes together and checked the size of the tarp. This is where we can make any last-minute adjustments if required. I trim mine down just a wee tad. Now the tarp is ready to be put on top of the stowage. First I give is a good soak in the PVA solution. Using a pair of round nose tweezers, I very carefully remove and unfold the tissue paper. As you can imagine, it is very fragile at this stage, so extra care has to be taken. Once I eventually get it unwrapped, I carefully lay it over the top of the foam boxes. Some small adjustments are made before adding to the rear of the tank. From here, it really is just a case of folding, unfolding, creasing, until you have the visual effect you want. Thanks to the slow drying time of the PVA, there is plenty of time to do this stage. If it really does go tits up, and believe me it happens, you can simply remove the tarp altogether and start again. Next up, I decided to upgrade the handles on the rear deck with some metal wire. This will give me something to tie the rope that will be holding the stowage in place. I needed to cut the molded handles off and carefully drill out the handle positions. These are carefully glued in place using the black CA glue. As described earlier, I decided to rip off one of the front mud guards. Why I decided it at this moment I don't know, but I am happy with the result. You can't go wrong with a little battle damage. I cut and sanded the area and reattached the piano hinge. More metal handles are added to the rear, as well as giving me the second side to tie the rope. It also adds some nice detail. I used some thread as scaled rope for the stowage. It is rather thin, but I think it's a good scale to what would be used for this kind of thing. Carefully threading the string through the new handles, back and forth until the whole thing is tied down. A little CA glue on the ends of the rope to hold them down, and the stowage area is done. The kit comes with rubber band tracks which, in all honesty, I cannot stand. So I modelled and 3D printed my own workable track links out of resin. These have more detail and give a realistic sag to the tracks. Again, these are also available on my online store. The link is in the description. I added camouflage netting around the turret using cheesecloth. There are several different options, but I found this one to be perfect scale for 1:35. I'll try and dig out a link and put it in the description. The process is similar to the tarp, soaking in PVA solution and letting it set. The only difference here is I removed it after it cured for painting. The final piece to the jigsaw is the radio antenna. For this, I used a piece of sprue and carefully melted it with a lighter until it flops. Once it's soft enough, I stretch it until I have some pieces thin enough to be an antenna. Finally, I cut it to the required size and attach it to the top of the tank. Voila, that is the entire build process for the Cromwell. Thank you for watching if you have made it this far. If you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot. But for now, goodbye. I look forward to seeing you for the next part, the painting.